The mansion was silent in a way that hurt. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that reminded everyone of what was missing. The mafia boss's daughter sat by the window, small hands pressed against the glass, watching other children laugh in the garden below. She had never cried, never screamed, never spoken a single word in her life. Doctors had tried everything. Specialists flew in from 3 countries. White coats shook their heads and whispered the same sentence every time. She will never speak. The mafia boss accepted many things in his life. This was not one of them. Then one night, long after the guards changed shifts, a maid entered the child's room. She wasn't supposed to be there. She knelt beside the girl, pulled a small bottle from her apron, dark glass, no label, and poured a few drops into a cup of warm water. Her hands were steady, too steady. "Just drink," she whispered. "Trust me." The girl hesitated, then obeyed. Seconds passed. Nothing happened. Then the child's fingers curled tight around the cup. Her eyes widened, and from her throat, a sound escaped. Not a cry, not a cough. A word. Soft, broken, but real. "Ma." The maid froze. Down the hall, the mafia boss dropped his phone. Because for the first time since his daughter was born, the silence was gone. And what he would soon discover about that maid would change his entire world. Stay with me until the end, because the truth behind that mysterious drink revealed a secret the mafia boss was never meant to uncover. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Vincent Romano ruled the Chicago underworld with an iron fist. His name alone could silence entire rooms. Men twice his size stepped aside when he walked past. Politicians took his calls at 3 in the morning. But none of that mattered when he looked at his daughter, Isabella. Isabella was 7 years old, with dark curls that framed her pale face and eyes that seemed to hold entire conversations she could never voice. The doctors called it selective mutism. The specialists labeled it a neurological mystery. Vincent called it his greatest failure. The Romano estate sprawled across 40 acres of perfectly manicured grounds in Lake Forest. Guard towers, disguised as decorative structures, stood at each corner. Hidden cameras tracked every movement. The main house itself was a fortress built to look like a palace, with marble floors that echoed footsteps and crystal chandeliers that caught light like diamonds. But no amount of luxury could fill the silence that followed Isabella wherever she went. Vincent had tried everything money could buy. Dr. Margaret Chen from Johns Hopkins examined Isabella for 3 weeks straight. Professor Klaus Weber flew in from Switzerland with experimental treatments. Dr. Raj Patel brought ancient meditation techniques from Mumbai. Each one arrived with confidence and left with apologies. The irony wasn't lost on Vincent. He commanded an empire built on words, threats, negotiations, orders that moved millions of dollars with a single phone call. Yet he couldn't buy his daughter a voice. Maria Santos had worked for the Romano family for 6 months. She was quiet, efficient, and unremarkable in every way that mattered to men like Vincent. At 42, she had weathered skin and gentle hands that never trembled. Even when Vincent's rage shook the windows, she cleaned Isabella's room every morning, dusted the unused toys, and changed sheets that barely wrinkled because the child slept so still. But Maria noticed things others missed. She saw how Isabella's fingers moved when she watched television, mimicking the shapes of words she couldn't speak. She noticed the way the girl's throat worked when she tried to swallow, like something was stuck inside. Most importantly, she recognized the frustration burning behind those dark eyes. The same frustration Maria had felt 30 years ago in a village outside Guadalajara. Maria's grandmother had been a curandera, a healer who understood that some ailments couldn't be treated with pills or surgery. Before Maria left Mexico, her grandmother had given her 3 small bottles wrapped in cloth. For when modern medicine fails, the old woman had whispered. But use them wisely, Mija. Some gifts come with prices. 2 of those bottles were already empty. used years ago to help Maria's own children through illnesses that doctors couldn't explain. The third bottle had traveled with her through 5 different jobs, waiting for the right moment. Maria had almost thrown it away a dozen times, convinced it was just superstition from an old woman who trusted folklore over science. But watching Isabella struggle in silence, Maria felt her grandmother's presence as clearly as if the old woman was standing beside her. The night everything changed started like any other. Vincent was in his study conducting business that required soundproof walls. His wife, Elena, was at another charity gala, playing the role of respectable socialite. The guards were focused on the perimeter, watching for external threats. No one was watching the help. Maria finished her evening duties and should have gone home to her small apartment in Cicero. Instead, she climbed the grand staircase to the 2nd floor, her footsteps muffled by thick Persian carpets. Isabella's room was at the end of the hall, painted pale yellow with white furniture that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Isabella was awake, as Maria had known she would be. The child rarely slept well, often standing at her window for hours, watching the world beyond the glass. Tonight she wore pink pajamas with tiny butterflies, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. "Hola, pequeña," Maria whispered, though she knew Isabella wouldn't respond. The girl turned from the window, her eyes curious but unsurprised. Somehow, Isabella had been expecting her. Maria pulled the small bottle from her apron pocket. The glass was so dark, it looked black, and the liquid inside moved with an oily thickness that caught no light. She had memorized her grandmother's instructions years ago: 3 drops in warm water, given with faith and received with trust. "This might taste strange," Maria said softly as she prepared the mixture, "but it will help. I promise you it will help." Isabella watched every movement with the intensity of a child who had learned to communicate through observation alone. When Maria offered her the cup, their eyes met. For a moment that stretched between heartbeats, something passed between them, an understanding that transcended language. Isabella drank without hesitation. The first minute brought nothing. Isabella sat on her bed, the empty cup in her lap, looking at Maria with patient expectation. Maria felt doubt creeping in. Maybe her grandmother's remedies were just old wives' tales after all. Maybe she had just risked everything for nothing. Then Isabella's hand flew to her throat. Her eyes widened, not with fear but with surprise. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Her breathing quickened. "Well, what's happening?" The voice was barely a whisper, rough from years of disuse but unmistakably real. Maria's knees nearly buckled. "Dios mío," she breathed. Isabella's face transformed. 7 years of trapped words seemed to rush toward her lips at once. I can speak." The voice grew stronger with each syllable. "Maria, I can speak." The joy in Isabella's voice pierced through the mansion's heavy silence like a bell. Down the hall, Vincent's office door slammed open. His footsteps thundered across marble floors as he ran toward his daughter's room. But Maria was already moving. She grabbed Isabella's hands, her mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. Vincent Romano was not a man who believed in miracles. He was a man who demanded explanations, and Maria had none that would satisfy him. "Listen to me carefully," Maria whispered urgently. "You must never tell anyone what I gave you. Do you understand? This must be our secret." Isabella nodded, but her eyes were bright with the wonder of her newfound voice. "Why can't I tell Papa?" Before Maria could answer, the bedroom door burst open. Vincent Romano stood frozen in the doorway, his face a mask of disbelief and raw emotion. The man who had stared down federal judges and rival crime bosses without flinching was trembling at the sound of his daughter's voice. "Papa?" Isabella's voice was soft but clear, each syllable a miracle that seemed to hang in the air like music. "Papa, I can talk now." Vincent's knees buckled. He dropped to the floor beside Isabella's bed, tears streaming down his weathered face. For the first time in 7 years, his daughter had called him Papa, not with gestures or written words, but with her actual voice. "How?" Vincent whispered. his voice cracking. How is this possible? Maria stepped back into the shadows, hoping to disappear, but Vincent's sharp eyes found her immediately. Years of reading people had taught him to notice everything, and right now, Maria's terrified expression told him exactly who was responsible for this miracle. You, Vincent said, rising slowly to his feet. His voice carried the dangerous quiet that preceded either great reward or terrible punishment. What did you do? Isabella looked between her father and Maria, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Papa, Maria helped me. She gave me something that made my throat feel better. Vincent's eyes never left Maria's face. What did you give her? Maria's mouth went dry. She could lie, but Vincent Romano had spent decades detecting deception. She could run, but his guards would catch her before she reached the front gate. She could tell the truth, but that truth would lead to questions she couldn't answer, without revealing secrets that had been buried for generations. Please, Senor, Maria whispered. Your daughter can speak now. Isn't that what matters? What I asked is what matters, Vincent replied, stepping closer. What did you give my daughter? Isabella tugged at her father's sleeve. Papa, don't be angry with Maria. She helped me. My throat felt stuck, like there was a rock inside, and now it's gone. Vincent's expression softened when he looked at Isabella, but hardened again when he turned back to Maria. My study. Now. Vincent's study was a shrine to power and intimidation. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, covered with photographs of Vincent shaking hands with mayors, senators, and men whose names never appeared in newspapers. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, its surface clean except for a single lamp that cast harsh shadows across Vincent's face. Maria stood before the desk, like a defendant awaiting judgment. Vincent circled her slowly, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was deceptively calm. I've had 3 teams of security experts sweep this house for bugs, poisons, and surveillance devices. I've had background checks run on every person who enters these grounds. I know that you send money to your sister in Guadalajara every month. I know that your son graduated from community college last year. I know that you haven't missed a day of work in 6 months. He stopped directly in front of her. What I don't know is how a maid from Cicero managed to accomplish what the best doctors in the world could not. Maria's hands shook, but her voice remained steady. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. The old ways? Vincent's eyebrows rose. You're talking about folk medicine? Herbs and roots? My grandmother was a healer in our village, Maria said carefully. She knew things that doctors don't learn in medical school. Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. You expect me to believe that some peasant woman from Mexico had a cure that Harvard-trained specialists missed? I expect you to believe that your daughter can speak, Maria replied quietly, because you heard her voice with your own ears. The boldness of her response surprised Vincent. Most people cowered when he used that tone. Maria was scared, he could see that, but she wasn't backing down. Show me what you gave her, Vincent demanded. Maria hesitated, then reached into her apron and pulled out the dark bottle. Vincent took it carefully, holding it up to the light. The liquid inside was thick and black, moving like oil when he tilted the glass. What is it? My grandmother called it the voice of the earth. It's made from roots that grow in sacred places, prepared under specific conditions. Vincent unscrewed the cap and sniffed. The smell was strange, earthy and bitter with undertones of something he couldn't identify. This could be anything. Poison, drugs, some kind of experimental compound. If I wanted to poison your daughter, would I have stayed to see the results? Maria asked. Would I have used something that made her better instead of worse? Vincent had to admit she had a point, but admitting that didn't make this situation any less dangerous. If word got out that his daughter had been cured by some mystical potion, every desperate parent in the city would be demanding the same treatment. Worse, his enemies might see it as proof that Vincent was losing his rational edge, turning to superstition instead of logic. How much of this do you have? Vincent asked. That's the last bottle. My grandmother only made 3 before she died. Vincent felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that such power existed in such a small amount was terrifying. Where did she get the knowledge to make it? Maria's eyes grew distant. The knowledge has been passed down through generations of women in my family. My grandmother learned it from her grandmother, who learned it from hers. It goes back hundreds of years, to before the Spanish came to our lands. And you're telling me that this ancient recipe can cure conditions that modern medicine can't touch? Not everything, Maria said quickly. Only certain things. Conditions where the spirit is trapped inside the body, where the problem isn't physical damage, but something deeper. Vincent stared at the bottle again. The rational part of his mind rejected everything Maria was telling him, but the rational part of his mind had also told him that Isabella would never speak. And now she was upstairs, probably chattering away to her stuffed animals. Who else knows about this? Vincent asked. No one. The knowledge dies with me unless I pass it on. Your children? Your sister? They know some things, but not this. My grandmother chose me to carry the deepest secrets because she said I had the gift. Vincent walked to his window, looking out at the grounds where his men patrolled in carefully planned patterns. Everything in his world was controlled, predictable, explainable. This bottle represented chaos, the unknown, forces beyond his understanding or command. But it had given his daughter a voice. I need to understand how this works, Vincent said finally. Not just that it works, but how. Can it be replicated? Analyzed? Improved? Maria shook her head. The knowledge isn't something you can study in a laboratory. It's not about chemistry or biology. It's about understanding the connection between the physical world and the spiritual one. That's not an answer I can work with. It's the only answer I have. Vincent turned back to face her. Then you're going to teach me everything you know. Maria's face went pale. Signor, I cannot. The knowledge is sacred. It's not meant to be used for profit or power. Who said anything about profit? Vincent's voice grew cold. My daughter can speak because of what you gave her. But what happens if the effect wears off? What happens if she gets sick again? I need to know that I can protect her. The truth in his words hit Maria like a physical blow. She had acted on instinct and compassion, but she hadn't considered the long-term implications. What if the treatment was only temporary? What if Isabella's voice faded as the mysterious compounds left her system? I don't know if it's permanent, Maria admitted. My grandmother used it for different things. Sometimes the effects lasted forever. Sometimes they needed to be renewed. Vincent's jaw tightened. Then you'll stay here. You'll watch Isabella every day, and if she shows any signs of regression, you'll treat her again. I have my own family to take care of. They'll be taken care of. Better than you could manage on a maid's salary. Vincent moved to his desk and pulled out a checkbook. Your sister in Guadalajara? What does she need? Medical care? A new house? Your son's college debt paid off? Maria stared at him in shock. You're bribing me. I'm ensuring your cooperation. There's a difference. And if I refuse? Vincent's smile was cold. I don't think you understand the situation you're in. You entered my home without permission and gave my daughter an unknown substance. In any court of law, that would be considered assault, possibly attempted murder. Your immigration status might not survive that kind of scrutiny. The threat hung between them like a blade. Maria understood perfectly. Vincent Romano was offering her a choice between cooperation and destruction. What exactly are you asking me to do? Live here. Watch over Isabella. Teach me what you know about these treatments. In exchange, your family will want for nothing, and you'll have my protection. Protection. Maria looked at Vincent's outstretched hand, knowing that shaking it would seal her fate forever. The protection he offered came with golden chains, and once those chains were locked, there would be no escape from the Romano Empire. I need time to think, Maria whispered. You have until morning, Vincent replied. But understand this, Maria. You opened a door tonight that can never be closed. Isabella has a voice now, and I will do whatever it takes to ensure she keeps it. As Maria left the study, her mind raced with the weight of what she had unleashed. She had acted out of compassion, but compassion in Vincent Romano's world always came with a price. Walking down the marble hallway, she could hear Isabella's laughter echoing from her bedroom, the sound both beautiful and terrifying. The next morning brought chaos that Maria could never have anticipated. Isabella woke up talking, and she didn't stop. 7 years of silent observations poured out of her in an unstoppable flood. She described the taste of colors, the sound of sunlight, the feeling of words trapped in her chest, like butterflies in a jar. "Papa, did you know the chandelier in the dining room sings when the wind hits it just right?" Isabella chattered over breakfast, her voice growing stronger with each sentence. "And Maria's hands smell like cinnamon and secrets. And the man who brings the groceries has sad eyes because he misses his daughter in the old country." Vincent sat transfixed, hanging on every word his daughter spoke. But Maria noticed something else, something that made her stomach clench with worry. Isabella wasn't just speaking normally. She was speaking about things she shouldn't know, seeing connections that 7-year-old children didn't typically make. Elena Romano returned from her charity gala to find her world completely transformed. The woman who had spent years learning to communicate with her silent daughter through gestures and expressions suddenly faced a child who wouldn't stop talking. Elena's carefully constructed life of quiet dignity crumbled as Isabella's voice filled every corner of the mansion. "How is this possible?" Elena demanded, cornering Vincent in the kitchen while Isabella played in the garden, narrating every flower and butterfly to anyone who would listen. Yesterday she was mute. Today she's speaking like she swallowed a dictionary. "What did you do?" Vincent had prepared for this question, but Elena's sharp intelligence made lying difficult. "One of the staff discovered a treatment that the doctors missed. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." "Which staff member?" Elena's eyes narrowed. "And what kind of treatment?" Before Vincent could answer, Isabella burst through the garden doors, her face glowing with excitement. "Mama, I can tell you everything now. The roses are whispering about rain coming tomorrow, and the fountain knows stories about every coin people threw in it, and Maria's grandmother visits her in dreams to make sure she's being brave." Elena stared at her daughter in shock. The words themselves were strange enough, but Isabella's eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before. It was as if the mysterious treatment had awakened more than just her voice. "Isabella, sweetheart," Elena said carefully, "how do you know about Maria's grandmother?" "She told me," Isabella replied matter-of-factly. "Not with words, but with the feeling that came with the special water. Grandmother's love was mixed right into it." Maria, who had been quietly arranging flowers nearby, froze. Isabella was describing things that should have been impossible for her to know. The drink hadn't just unlocked her voice. It had opened channels of perception that Maria's grandmother had warned about in whispered stories. That afternoon, Dr. Chen returned for what was supposed to be a routine follow-up appointment. Vincent had called her the moment Isabella began speaking, claiming it was a sudden breakthrough that needed immediate documentation. Dr. Chen arrived expecting to find minor improvements, not a complete transformation. "This is medically impossible," Dr. Chen repeated for the 3rd time, reviewing her test results. Yesterday, this child had selective mutism with no apparent cause. Today, she's speaking fluently with vocabulary levels that exceed her age group. Neural pathways don't just repair themselves overnight. Isabella sat patiently through the examination, chattering about everything she observed. "Dr. Chen, your stethoscope is lonely because it only hears sick hearts, never happy ones. And you have a scar on your hand from when you tried to catch a falling star as a little girl, but it was just broken glass." Dr. Chen jerked her hand back, staring at the thin white scar on her palm that Isabella couldn't possibly have seen. "How did you know about this?" "The same way I know that you became a doctor because your little brother couldn't speak either, and you promised him you'd find a way to fix voices that got lost," Isabella said gently. "But he died before you could help him, and that's why you always look sad when you work with children like me." The color drained from Dr. Chen's face, She had never told anyone about her brother, not even her husband. The tragedy that drove her career was buried in medical school records and childhood grief that she thought she had left behind. "Mr. Romano," Dr. Chen said shakily, "I need to speak with you privately." In Vincent's study, Dr. Chen paced like a caged animal. "That child knows things she has no way of knowing. Personal details about my life that aren't written anywhere. Either someone has been feeding her incredibly detailed information, or something else is happening here." "What kind of something else?" Vincent asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "I've heard stories," Dr. Chen admitted reluctantly. "Cases in remote areas where traditional healers achieved results that couldn't be explained by conventional medicine. But those were always dismissed as coincidence or misdiagnosis. And now? Now I'm wondering if we've been too quick to dismiss things we don't understand." Dr. Chen sat heavily in the chair across from Vincent's desk. "Your daughter isn't just speaking, Mr. Romano. She's demonstrating abilities that suggest the treatment affected her neurological function in ways that go far beyond simple speech recovery." Vincent felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever was in that treatment didn't just fix her voice. It enhanced her cognitive abilities, possibly her intuitive functions, in ways that modern science can't explain or predict." The implications hit Vincent like a physical blow. If Isabella's transformation became public knowledge, she would become a target for every desperate parent, every researcher, every government agency that wanted to understand and control such power. His daughter wouldn't just be the boss's kid anymore. She would be a living miracle that everyone would want to possess. "Doctor, I need your complete discretion on this matter," Vincent said quietly. "Isabella's safety depends on it." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I'll document this as an unexplained recovery and recommend no further testing for now. But Mr. Romano, you need to understand that changes like this don't happen in isolation. If the treatment affected her neurological function this dramatically, there could be other effects we haven't seen yet." That evening, as the household settled into an uneasy routine around Isabella's constant chatter, Maria found herself drawn to the child's bedroom. Isabella was supposed to be sleeping, but soft whispers drifted from behind her door. Maria cracked the door open and froze. Isabella was sitting cross-legged on her bed, apparently having a conversation with empty air. Her voice was different now, older somehow, speaking in a mixture of English and Spanish that she shouldn't have known. "Yes, Abuela, I understand," Isabella whispered. "The gift comes with responsibility, but I'm only 7. How can I help people when Papa doesn't even understand what happened to me?" Maria's heart stopped. Isabella was speaking to her grandmother, the curandera who had died 3 years ago, the same grandmother whose spirit had guided the creation of the mysterious drink. "Maria?" Isabella turned toward the door, her eyes shining in the darkness. "Abuela says you're scared. She wants you to know that everything happens for a reason, and the old knowledge needs new guardians." Maria entered the room slowly, her hands trembling. "Isabella, who are you talking to?" "Your grandmother. She's been waiting a long time to find someone who could carry on her work. She says the bottles were never just medicine. They were keys to unlock the connections between our world and the spirit world." "What connections?" Maria whispered. Isabella patted the bed beside her, inviting Maria to sit. "She says some people are born with doors in their minds that are locked tight. The special water doesn't just open those doors. It teaches the person how to walk between worlds. That's why I can hear things that aren't there and know things I never learned." Maria felt the weight of generations settling on her shoulders. Her grandmother had tried to prepare her for this moment, but Maria had been too young and too frightened to understand. Now, faced with a 7-year-old child who spoke with the wisdom of the ancestors, she realized that the Romano mansion had become the center of something much larger than Vincent's criminal empire. "What does your grandmother want me to do?" Maria asked. Isabella's eyes grew serious, reflecting knowledge far beyond her years. "She wants you to teach Papa that power isn't just about money and fear, Real power comes from understanding the connections between all living things, and she wants you to prepare me for what's coming. What's coming? Isabella looked toward the window, where the lights of Chicago sparkled in the distance. Other people will hear about what happened to me. They'll come looking for the cure, but they won't understand that the cure chooses the person, not the other way around. Some of them will be desperate parents like Papa. Others will be dangerous people who want to use the gift for evil. Maria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. How do we protect you? We don't hide, Isabella said firmly. Hiding makes people more curious. Instead, we prepare. We learn everything Abuela can teach us before the dangerous people arrive. Outside Isabella's window, Vincent Romano stood in his garden, staring up at his daughter's room where soft whispers continued long into the night. He had built his empire on the principle that knowledge was power, but tonight he realized there were forms of knowledge that could destroy everything he had worked to create. His phone buzzed with a text from his lieutenant, Tony. "Boss, we got a problem. Word is spreading about the kid. People are asking questions." Vincent closed his eyes, knowing that the peaceful life he had fought to build for his family was about to be shattered. The miracle that had given Isabella a voice was about to make her the most dangerous child in Chicago. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, an old curandera smiled, knowing that the ancient knowledge would find new guardians, no matter how high the price. The transformation of Isabella Romano was complete, but the real story was just beginning. The morning after Isabella's first conversation with the spirits, Vincent woke to find his entire security team in chaos. Reports flooded in from across the city. Word had leaked about the miracle cure, and desperate families were gathering outside the Romano gates like pilgrims at a shrine. But these weren't ordinary desperate families. Chicago's underworld had its own network of whispers, and when a made man's daughter suddenly spoke after 7 years of silence, everyone wanted to know how. Vincent's rivals saw opportunity. His allies saw leverage. And somewhere in the shadows, federal agents saw a new angle to finally bring down the Romano Empire. Maria stood at the kitchen window, watching the growing crowd beyond the mansion's walls. Mothers held photographs of their own silent children. Fathers carried briefcases full of cash, ready to buy miracles. And scattered among them, she noticed men in expensive suits who weren't there for healing at all. "This is what I was afraid of," Maria whispered to Elena, who had barely slept since Isabella's transformation began. The gift was never meant to be sold or stolen. It chooses who it helps. So there you have it. Maria's ancient remedy didn't just give Isabella a voice. It awakened abilities that connected two worlds, binding a mafia boss to secrets older than his empire. Sometimes the most powerful transformations come not from money or force, but from the courage to trust what science cannot explain. What do you think happened next? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew.